Now, I don't know exactly how I want to put this, but as I've built up this massive repertoire of books that I have read, and here's the thing, I never quite feel content after finishing a book, though I'm always pursuing that next read. Usually the way that I pick my next read is either if I recognize a book that I saw somewhere else or was recommended, or I am just reading the backs of books. But as I've been reading more and more, I've kind of found that there is a lot of stories that I'm interested that almost feels like I'm reading the same kind of book over and over again. Whether I'm just drawn to a certain kind of genre or just a format of a story. I find myself not adventuring out as much into different genres and style of writing as I did when I first really got back into reading. Why do I always seek out the same kinds of books, and why am I drawn to familiarity? A lot of my questions begun to form after I read Lost Souls Meet Under a Full Moon. I was away for a while and wanted to feel a comfort while I was reading this, and I was also searching for a certain kind of feeling, the fall vibe. I've been getting heavy fall vibes lately, so I decided to get 2 books. So I just finished reading like the first third of this book, and I'm not gonna lie, I did not know that it was going for the before the coffee gets cold kind of vibe. I almost really liked the first chapter more than I probably should, and kind of wish that the whole book was kind of going on with this idea of finding a young girl who's more timid and kind of is rejected from her family a little bit and kind of feels socially isolated, going to go meet this famous TV star. Like, I liked that story and I wish there was more of it. I just finished the 3rd chapter, and that was the chapter of the 2 girls where one of them becomes the understudy in a play of her best friend. They kind of become competitive with one another, and it's really sad because basically because she becomes the understudy, wants the other girl to get injured, and then she ends up dying from it. Kind of. It doesn't really have too much clarity on exactly what transpired. They never actually get the clarity of talking about what they actually want to talk about, and it's really sad, I'm not gonna lie. That chapter definitely messed me up a little bit. Wow, I just finished the 4th story, and they're getting better and better. They keep getting more and more developed and have even more depth to them. Like, this one cut back and forth between a few different storylines, and this one's about a man who falls in love with a girl who kind of has a secret identity because she ran away from her parents. She didn't have that much money, and basically after he proposed to her, like, she disappeared. But then it turns out she actually died on a ferry like 7 years ago when she first went missing. And yeah, it's insane because now he's talking to her through the go-between. The go-between is actually how he found out she died, because he just thought she left. And yeah, the story is really, really good. Wow, this is interesting. I've never had a book actually end on the final page. Usually there's a little bit of pages in between the back cover, but wow. That was pretty good. I actually quite liked the ending and this final chapter of this book. It kind of goes back and explains our kind of, I guess, lead character, Ayumi, who is going to become the next go-between. And it talks about all of his thinking as he meets up with all of the different people that he is going to help. And I don't know, it's different than Before the Coffee Gets Cold because we never truly get the perspective of the person who runs the shop. And I think this one really dives into that and kind of explains how the go-between works and how the go-between has its own personality and how he has all the inner workings of trying to like figure out what happened to his parents, and like that whole mystery that's kind of gone throughout who is the go-between and how does the go-between actually work, all gets solved. Also, the very last line telling you that the power has been transferred and that's where it just ends is very good. Not everyone in the end of each of the stories get peace from meeting with their dead loved one. Also, just the concept overall is just great. As I've grown as a reader, I have noticed a tendency of mine as I look for that next book to read. I tend to gravitate towards books that I know I will like, or just have some familiarity with. When I'm browsing a bookstore, I gravitate towards familiar genres, authors, and narrative styles I already know that I will enjoy. Yet when I'm actually reading, I long for something that feels new and shakes up my expectations for what I think a genre or a story can be. It is a pattern that has become more apparent the more that I read. More and more, I feel like everything is the same, yet
yet I'm drawn to it, and have a natural preference for what feels recognizable and safe. I fall for the familiarity bias. I also literally fell for it with the marketing for this front cover. You see, right here what it says is, recalls early Haruki Murakami, Enchanting, Financial Times. I clearly liked other Murakami books, so this book markets to my familiarity. Author recognition is a huge thing. That is why I have read a lot of Brandon Sanderson's books. Though it feels at times he is constantly releasing books and it is impossible as a reader to catch up with all of his different books he's releasing, I know I will enjoy his characters, world building, and plots. I have yet to read one that I don't like, and there's a sense of security to that. I won't waste my time on a story I don't like. This predictability is part of what draws us to certain genres and tropes. I did not realize I have actually read a lot of Brandon Sanderson. I've read 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's a lot of books. But here's the dilemma. Sometimes familiarity can dull the excitement you get from discovery. As I read more and more books, the feeling of, oh, this feels like something else that I've already read, comes up more often. Not because these stories are identical, but because they utilize a lot of the same tropes. It just feels like there's less new coming from the experience of reading this new story. They rely on similar tropes, plot beats, and character archetypes. Don't get me wrong, I still read books that knock my socks off, but it just feels like that's fewer and far between than when I first started reading. I've just read too many peak stories, I guess, so many others just don't feel as good anymore. I guess in this case, ignorance is bliss. This also raises a whole different question. If I read all of the books that I feel like I really enjoyed and loved, if I read them now, would they still have the same experience with all of this knowledge of reading that I have gained from reading a ton of different books? Would they still resonate with me, or was it that place in time that I first read them and that's why I hold them so dear? But I guess that's just a different question in itself. But keep in mind, this isn't a flaw for the books in themselves. A lot of people do say it depends on what stage of life you're in to enjoy certain stories. We resonate with stories that feel like they have a little bit of ourself in them. So if that story was right for you at that point in time, then that's great. But enjoying new books and having this new view and experience of reading isn't completely the book's fault themselves. It's kind of just a byproduct of becoming a more experienced reader. The more stories you consume, the harder it is for you to be surprised by them. So there's a bunch of different paradoxes happening at the same time. There's the idea that I search for books based on familiarity in when I'm purchasing them, or when I'm looking at them at a library, or even just reading the back of books. I look for that familiarity, but at the same time, with all of the different language used to describe the book, using other books as reference points and playing to those familiarities for me to try and purchase it, is a direct contrast to when I actually am reading it and want to feel something different than the book that it is being compared from. And then on top of that, there is another paradox. The more familiar I become with a genre's patterns and language, the more I actually kind of appreciate it when it subverts all of those expectations. When you expect, because of the genre, one thing to happen and then something completely different happens. The framework that is used in Before the Coffee Gets Cold, of each chapter being an individual story where someone comes in and uses the service of the cafe, is utilized very, very similarly in Lost Souls Meet Under a Full Moon. So one is basically going back in time within the coffee shop, and the other is meeting up with someone who has passed on, and they utilize that same kind of trope, but for whatever reason, I really couldn't get into Lost Souls Meet Under a Full Moon. I really loved each of the individual stories, and we get really into them as I read them, but for whatever reason, I couldn't shake the impression Before the Coffee Gets Cold that I read all the way, probably like 2 years ago now. And I read this book so quickly, it breezed by, where this one is a similar length and I spent weeks on it. I thought each story was fantastic, and I definitely recommend Lost Souls Meet Under a Full Moon, and it is great, but because of the formatting being similar and their similarities, it didn't have the same impact on me as Before the Coffee Gets Cold did. Tropes aren't inherently bad though. They offer a shared language between writers and readers that allow for an understanding of the kind of emotional and narrative journey you will be embarking on. I know it's easier easier said than done. But you have to balance between familiarity and innovation. You have to twist the familiar just enough that it feels both comforting and revolutionary. With so much out there to read, I definitely lean towards this bias of familiarity. Because with so much out there, you don't want to waste time reading something that you won't like. And then reading has kind of become this negotiation between comfort and curiosity. And it's just interesting that when I first started reading, I was more willing to go and try new experiences and see new genres and experience different writing, while now I kind of lean towards the comforting aspect of it. And I have kind of developed what I like, and I kind of lean towards those different genres like fantasy and sci-fi. I feel like we as readers both want to feel at home with a story, but at the same time, it has to appeal with who we are as people and our ideals, but we also want to feel changed by it and that we are better off after experiencing it. Now, I don't know if the books that I read back then would still resonate with me now the way that they did back then, but I guess that's kind of a part of growing up and having a ton of new experiences and experiencing the world. My taste in books have changed, but it's going to keep evolving with me. Who knows what I'll like to read in 2 years or even in 6 months, because all the books that I'll read from now until 6 months from now will all change my opinion on that story that I read in 6 months. Yet I don't think I'll lose my appeal towards familiarity. I feel like the best books are ones that are both comforting from recognition and a thrill from discovering something new.